Joining me now, as he does each and every week, is Sky News Australia's media watchdog columnist, Gerard Henderson. Now, welcome back.
Thank you.
It's been a really big week in the media.
Big week.
But you've been looking at some stuff at the ABC, including some of their more self-promotional efforts.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
Well, I noticed David Spears came on the television and said, you know, that the finest reporters, the top of the brand, you get on Insiders if you get up and Sunday morning have a listen. But what I found out that it wasn't really true, because if you look at some of the finest reporters, they're often remarkably wrong. And I looked at Laura Tingle saying in 2018 that the Liberal Party was dead. I looked at Nikki Sarver saying in 2019 that the Liberal Party couldn't win that election. I looked at David Crowe, who's also an Insiders. He was saying the same thing. Then I looked at Mark Kenny, who's one of the great geniuses that David Spears talks about, and he got the Voice totally wrong. He said he realised when the Voice vote came out that he didn't understand his own country. Well, if he didn't understand his own country, he shouldn't be on Insiders telling us about his own country. But then he said, oh, perhaps he did, meaning he now understands it and it's very, very bad. So I just had a look at all that and I thought, well, if these are the top minds, perhaps you might stay in bed, or better still, watch Sky News.
Now, Gerard, you've been looking at another issue as well. It's the protest at Granville Boys High School. What can you tell us about it?
Well, the report in the ABC, in the print edition of the ABC online, said that certain chants were made, like from the river to the sea, and bring back the teacher who'd been stood down for a while. I understand he's back at school now, the sheikh who had expressed sympathy for the words that were said at the Bankstown Hospital about how certain nurses were prepared to kill certain Israelis. Now that's going to go before the courts, or some of it's going to go before the courts. But what they didn't say was there were very, very aggressive chants of Allahu Akbar, the Muslim cry, a very aggressive chants of that. And the ABC didn't cover that in the print edition. It was like it was never said. But if you watched all the other television stations, or pretty well all of them, they showed the footage, a very vivid footage, a very angry footage. But the ABC didn't cover it. It's like it never happened. I mean, you talk about fake news, but there was an example of no news because it just wasn't put in.
Well, it's bias by omission, isn't it? It's just suggestion that they're very scared of trying to depict this as being a broader issue with the population. They don't want to ever have that conversation, but it's an important conversation if you have groups of people chanting Allahu Akbar. It's a conversation you need to have.
It's very aggressive. And as the ASIO chief has said now, I mean, in terms of threats to life, Islamophobia is not the major issue. Anti-Semitism is the major issue. And what you had an example was at Bankstown Hospital, whatever else it might have been, it was certainly an anti-Semitic statement, because it was a statement made against an Israeli because that Israeli was a Jew. So that's a very clearly anti-Semitic statement. And the ABC is just covering for it. Another word for it is just old-fashioned censorship.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah.
Now, finally, we've got another ABC personality venturing a little bit away from news reporting and editorialising. Let's have a listen to the grab and then we'll discuss it.
Mel Clark, what do you make of those comments from Andrew Hastie?
Yeah, look, what we have heard from the Shadow Defence Minister there is really highlighting the concern with which the Coalition views these latest actions from the Chinese Navy and their belief that a more aggressive approach is warranted. What we didn't hear is an articulation of how or why a more aggressive approach might be received differently or lead to a different outcome. So he's pointing to what he sees as a weakness in the current approach being taken by Anthony Albanese and Labor's frontbench, but not yet an explanation of why a different approach would be more effective.
Now, Gerard, you're getting very good at pointing some of these and finding these clips. Melissa Clark she's putting forward the Coalition's argument, and then she's saying, but here's why the Coalition's argument isn't quite accurate.
Well, it should be assumed that if you're interviewing someone senior, like Mr. Hastie, you hear him out, and you should assume the viewers are bright enough to work out what he's saying and form their own conclusion. But now the ABC is putting in these commentators who then interpret what the interviewee said and tell us not only their idea of what he said, but more importantly, what he should have said but didn't say. But he has no right of reply. So this is kind of editorial, but it also is demeaning to the viewers, because it means the viewers are so stupid. You've got to have Ms. Clark telling you not only what he did say, but what he should have said if he had have said it.
It's also, I mean, not that it's the point, but I would also argue it's not true. I think there's a huge point of criticism with the Albanese government of them saying that we have restored, this relationship, and you've got these firing drills happening off the coast. Clearly, it's not restored to that level, and that's the coalition's argument. You've gone soft and you've had no benefit.
Well, it is the argument, because this relationship's not going to be restored, not because of anything Australia does, whoever's in government, but because of the current attitude of the Chinese Communist Party, which may change, but it hasn't changed in the last 10 years. There have been fluctuations. So what Andrew Hastie was saying was perfectly reasonable. If it wasn't reasonable, viewers should have been able to work it out for themselves without Melissa Clark coming in and telling them.
It's almost like a fact check. They're trying to insert these fact checks, but the problem is the fact check, you would say, is contested evidence as well.
Well, most of these are matters of opinion. I mean, they're not matters of fact. They're really matters of opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, as to fact check, what does that really mean? Because it basically means that people's got a different opinion.
Yeah.
And we know what Melissa Clark's opinion is. We don't
And
need
they
to hear
love
it.
to have their opinion.
Well, on this program, she comments about 6 times throughout the whole program. So we know where she stands.
Yep. And you pay for that opinion. Gerard Henderson, thank you so much for joining me, as always.